I once heard someone say that writing was perhaps the most important invention that humans have ever come up with, as it was able to pass on knowledge from previous generations to the next. And then someone like Socrates comes along and says that writing creates forgetfulness amongst the learned. And then just now in the new releases in bookstores, there's a title called Monsters, What Do We Do With Great Art by Bad People? And I think of that quote by Bill Hicks.
That's what we want, isn't it? Government-approved rock and roll? Don't you want to be at a concert one night, look to your right, and see Dan fucking Quayle right next to you, man? You know you're partying then. You know you're on the edge. Fuck it, the Quayle Monster's here. There ain't no coming back. We might be up till 11 tonight. Fuck this.
So it has been 10 years. 2014, I finished writing a trilogy of books called Bark. And just quite coincidentally, I had just finished a new trilogy of books that was not intended to be a trilogy, but upon finishing part 3, realized that it's wrapped up the first 2 parts quite nicely. I've written these 3 books in the last 3 years, literally one a year, a direct extension from the short stories that I'd written. So 10 years ago, I wrote Bark, and it was a pure work of fiction. And being the 10-year anniversary, I always knew I wanted to do a second edition because Bark was rushed. I had to get it done before the end of the year because I was planning to kill myself. That put a lot of time pressure on, finishing a trilogy as well as doing a lot of artwork for it. And it needed another draft to polish it before finishing, but there was literally no time according to my timetable. Events happened where I was taken away by the police and put in the secure ward at the hospital, and I am still alive. Then in 2016, I finally got around to rereading Bark and filling it full of my editorial changes that needed to be done. Here we are 10 years later, and while waiting for my new book to come back from printers before giving it a final edit, I literally had nothing else to do, so sat down and began doing a second edition of Bark. And that was something I was concerned about starting simply because of the mental space I was in 2014 was something I was not willing to return to. But fortunately, once I began, I was very happy with the way that my editing of it went, and all of the changes that I made in 2016 were excellent. But I now consider that this second edition of Bark to be the version that it should have been in 2014, but circumstances were somewhat beyond my control. I really had not thought about it in such a long time, and when you've written something as intense as a trilogy of books about a mass murderer that's just drenched in rape and racism and every aspect that makes up the continent that is America, what makes it so great in a terrible kind of way, it was the premise for why I wrote Bark in the first place. It's this parody of hypocrisy, and it's just ripe for picking apart from an objective point of view as an outsider looking at America, this monstrosity that it is with these hideous people just oblivious to their disgusting ways. And that makes fascinating subject matter, which I fully indulged balls deep in. I mean, it is horrific, a lot of the content. I mean, it's basically just non-stop violence. It really captured a certain aspect of my state of mind at the time and to this day. The very character Bark himself, is a certain part of myself, is this projection, this invocation, this thing that Bark is. But that was 100% the point of doing it. That was the whole occult foundation for it. As there is a deeply occult aspect running through the whole story, and his motivation behind things was my motivation behind writing Bark while planning to kill myself. And it's really dug up a certain part of my, I wouldn't say unconscious, because I was very consciously aware of what and why I was writing this ordeal, this epic that took place over the span of a year. In the story, it takes place over a year, which mirrored the year that I was locked up in my flat writing the fucking thing, which I don't recommend if you don't want to end up in hospital where you have to convince doctors of your sanity and that you're not going to kill yourself, and then still fuck off to Loch Ness to kill yourself, and then have to rationalize it somehow to yourself why you are not going to kill yourself after planning it so intricately for so long. That's something I don't recommend people trying, but I don't regret doing it at all. And now, being 10 years later and revisiting it, it's been a very reflective period that I've been going through, and I've been incredibly busy for the last few months, locked up, finishing a new book, because you have to inevitably reflect over the present tense in relation to the past tense, and how this overlap in time there is a point where you realize, how far have I come, but I am exactly in the same position as I was 10 years ago, and yet I am nowhere near where I was 10 years ago. But there are physical parts of the world, the fact that I am still in this fucking country, I'm still in Berlin after 19 fucking years now, that I fully acknowledge. You know, this city is hugely influential on the subject matter and the things that I write about in my books now, because Berlin is a ugly whore of a town, and I say that with authority, an ugly fucking whore of a town, and it doesn't get much more hideous and whorish than myself. And I say that with no shame. This city is covered in scars, personal scars relating to my life and the things I've done and the people I've known. I think of two books I've recently seen, photography books. One was taken by a Russian soldier directly after the Battle for Berlin in 1945, when the Russian army had come into the city and, raped it, where it's just a shell, it's just a burnt out, gutted fucking shell of a city. And there's all these Russian soldiers, celebrating because, war is over. And from their point of view, everything's great. They won the war, everything's fantastic. But I look at this book, these beautiful black and white photographs, and I know these places. I recognize Spittlemark. There was a photograph of this area. It's up by the canal in the center of town, and it's just all the buildings are just completely hollow. This is the city. This is the city I live in, and I don't mean that in a metaphorical sense. And there was a second book that I came across at the same time, a black and white photography book taken during the Soviet times, in the 80s in Berlin, and it was this bleak black and white photography of just these abandoned buildings, derelict. Cold winter nights, no one around. This is not the corona lockdown Berlin. This is everyday Berlin. I don't live in the fucking techno fetish party scene. That is an aspect of it, but that's not where that's not the heart of Berlin that I relate to. It's this smoldering fucking carcass. This stinking, empty, dead body that's been fucking just left on the streets and no one gives a fuck about it. It's just rotting. That is where I fucking live in the city. And I will never escape this fucking town. And so I write about my time here. And I write about the places I visited. I mean, the first book in this collection, Interfering with Divinities, every chapter is basically a different city I visited. There was Rome, Istanbul, Paris, Santiago de Compostela, Ghent, Strasbourg, Salzburg, Edinburgh, Dresden, Bath. But every time I returned to Berlin, Berlin, Berlin. Bit of a curse that I can't seem to escape. And then now facing this 10-year anniversary of Bark and my suicidal ideation, I ended up in Sofia in Bulgaria in January, sitting in the Orthodox cathedral, just wondering what the fuck I was doing there. I knew why I was there. I was there to see someone, as I always do. This is why I travel. I travel to see people, but I was just sitting in that fucking very dark, dank cathedral while there's a blizzard going on outside. And the only thing I could think of was going back to my hotel room and hanging myself with my shoestrings. But the only reason I didn't return to my hotel room was because I didn't want that to be the last thing I saw, which logically led me to thinking, why would that matter? And if that matters, then perhaps other things still matter. So I continued with my course, which was to continue to see this caretaker of a house in the south of the city. And that is what kept me alive for the last 10 years, was writing about that which truly interests me, following my true will. Knowing there is a God does not make life any less meaningless. I had a dream recently, and I don't generally take dreams seriously. I was in my childhood home, and there was this enormous storm outside, a massive hurricane type of storm, where these intense winds were just tearing trees up, and I was just backing away from the windows that were literally getting blown out of the frame. You can't really see anything down the valley, and then suddenly it just fucking stops, and the sun comes out immediately. And I walked over to the door and looked down the valley, and it was just blue skies. Everything was clear. There was no sign of a storm, but it was this gigantic cloud with a light burning in the center of it. It was this golden, like a burning light in the center of it. And then I heard a voice in my head say, "I am the Lord thy God." And it was a very casual, calm voice. And then I woke up. And I just immediately thought, why did it phrase it in that fucking thy God? Why is it this King James fucking dialect? So I Didn't take it too seriously. But shortly after that, I saw a friend of mine, an old friend, a good friend, one of the few friends that has actually tried to help me with my interests in history and theology. He wanted to know about these things, and he seemed kind of perturbed. He seemed kind of unsure of why I wouldn't want to talk about these things. And it's simply because so much of what I've written about is personal books of mine involve people who are just dead to me, and they will be as close to you as anyone can ever fucking be. Not just your best friend, someone you can really be honest with, and then they will just fucking disappear. There is nothing cheaper than human loyalty. There is no one in this city or any other that gives a fuck about you. This is a fundamental truth. There is no one that gives a fuck about you. The only person that does is you. Now, when I was taken away 10 years ago by the police kicking in my door, escorting me to the hospital, I had to talk to many different doctors, but I was very much aware I was just lying through my teeth, just because no one's going to fucking lock me up without me fighting. That's just not who I am. There was the person who got me into that situation by betraying my trust. One person I told what I was planning on doing ended up, calling the police. So again, don't trust anyone. You can't trust anyone, even though you could say that I'm still here perhaps because of her betraying that trust, but it's still a betrayal of trust. There is no trust. Your most intimate people you know can never be trusted. Anyone who says otherwise is a fool. And that's everyone. Everyone wants to be lied to. That's just humans. All humans want to be fucking lied to. That's why we have politicians as these demagogues that we fucking worship. Because no one lies more than fucking politicians. And yet we all every year pretend like they're not. This is the point I think I'm trying to get when it comes to writing so much shit over the years, is memory. I write because I need to reflect over events. I need to remind myself constantly of where I've come from and the mistakes I have made and behavior that is unacceptable in certain environments in order to adapt and learn. That is the point of being a human being. It's one advantage that we have over other animals is we can internally evolve quicker than most other species can, who are trapped to this primeval instincts that they have. I need to remember. I write down the people I visit, the events when they happen, which is why all of these books are written in diary form. I'm not interested in magic that is the illusionary type. I am not interested in religion unless there is a direct communication with the Godhead. I am not interested in traveling to all of these countries I've been to for the weather. I don't want a quiet life. That tedium disgusts me. I do not want the domestic. I've purely written for the same reasons as I have created art, to know more about myself through exploring ideas pushed as far as they can go. Now, when I wrote Bark was this work of pure fiction. It was this completely, set in America. It was mysterious land that is America, the great Satan that it is. And that was interesting for what it was, but I became aware of writing in third person, where I would suddenly realize I don't know what the fuck other people are thinking. Which is why when I finished writing Bar, I didn't want to write a book like that ever again. I didn't want to write a third person book of fiction because I don't have any idea of what other people are thinking, and I'm not really interested in trying to discern what other people are thinking, which is why these books that I write now are all first person prose, where I simply write how I perceive things and how other people will react. I don't know what anyone is thinking or what anyone does because everyone is a fucking liar. Trust fucking no one, no matter what they say their agenda or their motivation or their right to life is. So I've only ever written in the last 10 years in first person because I'm not interested in writing a book to sell. That's never been my motivation for any of my art or writing, even writing Bach. I knew it was not the sort of book that anyone would sell. No publisher would pick up. It is, like I said, full of racism, rape, and about as much violence as healthy genocide can produce. I never have written or created art for money. That has never been my motivation. That's what I work for. I work to pay the bills. The writing is really just a byproduct. The writing is there to keep an account, keep a record of the places I go and the people I see. And in 10 years, things have changed. I mean, I'm getting older now. No longer am I stalking professors and showing up in the middle of Germany in some small town at 3 in the morning and ringing their doorbell and telling them to meet me in their office tomorrow morning, only for them to call the police on me. Now I have become the person who strangers will show up on my doorstep at strange times from other countries, expecting answers. Again, it's just another byproduct of my own interests. Can't sit around waiting for strangers to show up on my door. I'd rather go and spend time at the Catholic Academy here in Berlin listening to lectures on the epistemological decolonization of the binational state of Israel. I'd rather spend my time doing that than sitting at fucking home every night watching goddamn Netflix and then just complaining about that shit the next fucking morning. Jesus Christ. I swear to God, people just fucking spend their life watching shit they hate so they can complain about it the next fucking day. That's even after this corona period of global existential crisis. People have just gone back to the same domestic tedium. That's kind of reassuring and yet tragic at the same time, that people are such sheep that they will be forced to face their own mortality and their own fucking meaninglessness of their fucking lives and just continue watching their Netflix and bitching and moaning. I mean, it's a beautiful cycle of goddamn decomposition that I have fucking no sympathy for. Once you have, you have enough food, you have enough water, you have enough Netflix and chill, and then fucking what? You just live stream some more horse shit. No one asks any of the really big questions And it's not even enough to ask big fucking questions. I don't want to ask big fucking questions to the void. I don't want to scream into a fucking abyss and for another fucking 46 fucking years. During the second of these three books, the Apocryphon of the Unrequited, I bought myself a copy of the King James Bible, and I got up every Sunday morning and I went to the Berliner Dome in the center of the city every Sunday morning and ignored the service, and I reread the New Testament. What I was specifically interested in reading was what Jesus himself was saying. Also, keep in mind, I was reading the non-canonical Nag Hammadi and other Gnostic text while I was also reading the New Testament, because I specifically wanted to discern a better understanding of what Jesus was actually trying to get across, exploring those subjects that are worth delving into, and religion and theology and theurgy specifically is one of the most interesting things I've come across, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. A lot smarter people than me have delved into these issues and come up with dead ends. But I don't want to be reading books by nice people. The only reason I read the Confessions by St. Augustine was because he literally confesses about what a fucking debauched, lecherous whore he was. It's like, I can relate to that. What's this guy got to say? I don't want to read about the confessions of someone who lived a morally upstanding, sheltered, good life, and then they found Jesus, and then they were saved, and then they fucking died a nothing life. So many people, however, love these goddamn black and white dichotomies. The infantilization of intellect. It's fucking disgusting. It's just good and it's just bad. There's no such fucking thing as evil. It's just humans being humans. And I don't want to read books by nice people. I want to read about Oscar Wilde being a fucking whore. I don't want to fucking read goddamn Sylvia Plath and her fucking depression. I don't want to read that shit. Someone writing a book about their self-obsessed, pathetic little nothing life, whining about the mundane 100 years ago, or in the 70s, or today, fucking makes me want to slit my wrists. That is not interesting. The entire internet is saturated in this goddamn neurotic, self-analytical goddamn masturbation about how fucking on the spectrum they are. It fucking disgusts me. I hate it. I fucking hate it. I want taboos. I don't want there to be no taboos. I want taboos, and then I want to commit those taboos. Without taboos and everything's just free for everyone to do things, where's the fun in that? I don't want everything to be permissible. I do not want everything to be permissible. I want there to be an Overton window, as everyone loves to fucking say. I want there to be an Overton window, and I want to play out here, outside of that Overton window. I like to see a girl who plays inside that nice safe zone, and then I get her to do things that she once thought were morally repugnant, and then she does it of her own choosing. That's fun. I don't know any adult whose brain is fully fucking formed. We're all susceptible to manipulation. We're all susceptible to being taken advantage of, and we all are. That is inevitable and unavoidable. We all pay tax. We all play the game. We all think we matter. There's all this charade of fucking human existence is. The world is meaningless, and there is a God, and that God gives no fucks about you and your meaninglessness. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Be a criminal. Don't be a criminal. Live a boring life. Write a book. Kill yourself. Don't kill yourself. Do you think God will give a fuck about it? When was the last time the sky cracked open and he came down and gave a fuck about you or anyone? The only time that happens is within your head. That's what truly interests me. I was somewhat disheartened by having done and seen so much and having so little to show for myself, that I developed this quite long ritual that involved several guests to come along and witness something, and it worked. But at the end of the day, had not heard back from any of these witnesses that had seen the things, and realized having witnesses doesn't change a thing. And you could see things that are insane, and no one will fucking talk to you about it. As a cold hard fact of reality, is you could share some phenomenon that will just make you realize that certain things exist, and no one will give a fuck. You will just have to get on with your day. Just suck it up, sunshine, and get on with your day. All those things you thought were real or weren't real, or those things you were in denial about for so long, or whatever it was, you're somehow justified, you're somehow vindicated, and no one gives a fuck. That is just how it is. So why bother trying to convince anyone of anything? And that's the only lesson that I took away from it, was there is no point in convincing other people of your own personal experiences in anything, because no one will care or give a fuck or see or relate, or if they do say they do, you have no reason to believe them in the slightest. Which is why I've written this trilogy of books for no one but myself. So I have a record of when things have happened, and I know whatever proceeds from here, how that will relate to the past. But no one else gives a fuck. And I'm not here to convince, proselytize. I'm not here out fucking preaching the good word of anything to anyone. There is no God. Jesus died in vain. Believe that or don't believe it. I don't give a shit. The testimony I've heard from people when they talk about people like Jesus coming into their lives is fascinating, psychologically fascinating, because they believe it. When I see someone running into a building and blowing themselves up, screaming, God is great, they believe it. That's a conviction, it's a power. There's people that kill people for the belief. Those people impress me and terrify me, because they are terrifying. And why would you want to live in a world that isn't terrifying? The world is a scary fucking place. That's the best part about it. I remember years ago, I did a series of artwork. Within it, there was a series of portraits of certain men that I had been inspired by in the past. And one of them was Christopher Hitchens. And an old friend of mine saw the whole series of art. I think it was like 80 pictures in this whole series. And he saw the picture of Christopher Hitchens. and he made a comment saying that Hitchens would hate my work. And I thought that was interesting. I like those passing comments where someone said something just off the cuff and it gives you pause to think, what would it mean if your heroes hate you? Like they say, never meet your heroes because they're always a disappointment. But beyond that, what if you meet your heroes and they see your work and they think your work is shit? And I thought, what would it be like if someone saw my work that I admire and they didn't like it? And I was like, well, that would just be like everyone else that sees my work. Most people have not found my work acceptable. And I've always been fine with that because, like I say, I don't do it for other people's approval or money. I do it because I need to navigate the world by understanding how I internalize things. But then I will hear people talking about a writer who has done something, Roald Dahl, for instance, and people say that his work is, the context in which he's written things now is inappropriate. Same with H.P. Lovecraft, who I've read pretty much all of his work. But then people, almost every time I hear anything about H.P. Lovecraft, everyone prefaces it with this whole big, he was a terrible racist and an anti-Semite. And it's like, fuck your goddamn preface. Get to the fucking point. I don't want to hear your goddamn current day fucking trigger warning about the fucking guy. You're going to talk about his work, or are you going to apologize for his fucking bad behavior? I want them to be a product of their time, just as I am a product of my time. I think of people fumbling over their fucking goddamn embarrassment. I'm afraid to read Lolita on the train because someone might think I'm trying to groom 12-year-olds or something. I don't read the Bible to get some moral guidance. I read it for the gratuitous violence. Jesus Christ, what the fuck am I here for? I don't go to a fucking horror movie because I'm here for the goddamn character development. But I'm sick of this. These kids trying to live this weirdly romanticized 1920s and they're in Paris or something. These fucking, what do they call them? Dark academia, these fucking kids. And they're all fucking moody and they're writing books of poetry and it's like, yeah, sure, we're all teenagers once writing fucking soppy poetry about some fucking cunt we fucked once. And so they're living on the edge, they're smoking, they're drinking, they're fucking down in this basement. Let's snort some dirty fucking heroin off some goddamn toilet seat. Yeah, sure, go right ahead. Get your hepatitis, I don't mind. But don't then fucking come and preach to me that you're fucking slightly bothered by relevant fucking racism. Are you trying to live an interesting life? Or are you here to fucking preach what's right and what's wrong? Because I'd rather be on the wrong side of history than on the right side of whatever the fuck is conveniently trending right fucking now. I want my artists to be high on meth. I want them to be misogynistic. I want them to be casually horrific. I'm not a good role model for anyone, for anything. But when it comes to writing, I think that the most interesting place to gain inspiration from is outside. Whenever I see this cliche portrayal of some writer or artist just staring at a blank screen or a blank page, waiting for the gods to shit on them from a great height, it just makes me want to fucking puke. You're never going to gain any sort of understanding or insight or revelation from sitting in your fucking hovel of a little flat. Go out into the world, travel, and actively seek out people who are doing or know about things that you don't. I write in these these little notebooks I've done for years. It didn't start off with notebooks. I mean, I think originally it started off. I remember I went to Romania in 2017, I believe, and I remember knowing I wanted to write about whatever the fuck I was about to experience, and I was thinking about going to buy some small laptop, just one of these tiny little, notepad type of things, basically a little bit bigger than this, to take with me and type up. But then I was worried that I would lose it, or if I didn't know how safe Romania was, maybe it would get stolen, and then I would lose everything I tried to document. So I went, let's just buy a notepad. So I just went and bought like a fucking, €1 pad of paper and a pen. And I hadn't written since I stopped writing in my diaries in 2014. So it's been quite a few years, and it was kind of funny getting back into handwriting. And then I found that these notebooks were just perfect size to fit into my coat pocket when I travel. I like to write things down immediately or as soon as possible after they happen, to catch those tiny little details that we forget. And again, this is a theme of this video, is me talking about how the importance of remembering those things that we forget. They say that every recall is a reframe. When you recall a memory, we're reframing it in the current context of it, so it actually changes the memory over time. But I mean, they also say that children that don't have a lot of friends, or don't tell their stories, or tell the things that they get up to, if they don't repeat their stories or repeat their life to people, they will forget it. It's irrelevant. I don't have the first 5 years of my life. It's just blank. I don't remember the first 5 years of my life. It's just 5 years of just nothing. There's just nothing there. Let's just take any page. Like here, here we go. This is Wednesday, the 17th of January, 2024, and there is a paragraph this much of a page. One paragraph. That's all that happened from that day. If you ask me right now what happened on the 17th of January this year, fucking no idea. It's just, I have no conscious memory of that. Let's have a look. What does it say? I had lunch in Mita with a friend after her yoga class. Oh, I do remember that. Now, I remember that, but it was just literally an interaction about some guy she was fucking. What else happened in that entire day? Fucking gone. It's gone into the void. It's been recycled through my brain. There is nothing that happened that day that was of significance, and that is most of our life. That is, this book takes place over an entire year, and whatever didn't happen in this was probably, a lot of it was just working or sleeping, but a lot of it is just fucking nothing happened that was of significance. I like to write down the things of significance, because then I remind myself to seek out answers to things that I have not yet found conclusions to. When I am writing in my notebooks like this, I will often go back, while I'm writing them, I'll go back and reread the stuff, and I'll be like, I haven't found out what the fuck that guy from Italy was really going on about this place in Bulgaria. I need to look into that. Because sometimes we get distracted with other shit. I need there to be some follow through with whatever interests me, and that is why I fucking write. I don't write because I want to sell a book that has a fascinating narrative that's going to get the young adults out there because they want to read a tragic romance. That doesn't interest me. I'll write about the grotesque fornication that I partook in with some girl that I met randomly at the library. Which there's an obscene amount of sexual content in my work, but there always has been, because sex is an integral part of life. It can create some of the most interesting dynamics with people. And sex is, after all, power, or is that rape? I can't remember, one of the two. Like with all aspects of life, my interest in the occult, I'm not just interested in learning about the history of famous magicians I want to practice it. I don't want to just learn about celestial messengers. I want to contact them. I don't want to just have vanilla fornication. I want to indulge every sadistic impulse that I can dig up in my cesspool of a mind. I want to get girls to do degrading, humiliating things for my amusement because it's amusing. Isn't that why people have sex? Not just for the pleasure, but for the entertainment value of it? Or do people just, switch the lights off and you fuck like you're some Orthodox Jew between the sheets? I mean, that's fine if that's your ticket, but I would rather have the lights burning on while I ram inanimate objects into every orifice of some girl, and I'm wearing basically nothing but rubber gloves. Why not? Why not pursue all avenues of life to their extreme? I despise this self-censorship, this attitude that everyone has toward doing the right thing, and it's the right thing for who? I cannot stand modern day philosophers, young people in particular, trying to forge some new found rationalization for their belief structure, and it is nothing more than a recycled plagiarism of past puritanical beliefs. Where is the original thought? Where is the, I'm going to do something that is morally questionable? And, I can understand some people are scared of doing shit like that. And it's like, that's fine. I'm not. That's interesting shit. You're never going to talk to God if you're a fucking chicken shit. There's this, some might say, patriarchal metaphor that God is the father figure, mother figure, whatever archetypal figure you want to call it, even if you just call it teacher or whatever, the universe, the womb that is the world. That's fine. Don't think that teacher isn't a cruel son of a bitch. He's not out here holding your hand. That teacher is a mean old bastard. That's the only God I've ever seen. He's a mean old fuck. And I wouldn't respect him if he wasn't. I would refuse the path if it was just laid out before me. If there was the yellow brick road straight to enlightenment, I would not take it. I would fuck off down into the gutter. But first of all, that's not a reality. The reality is that yellow brick road would have a toll on it, and you would have to pay to win. And I could never afford to win enlightenment. I had to crawl through the gutter. But I didn't just crawl along the side of the yellow brick road, I went the fuck away from it. And the older I get, the more I understand that that's where Jesus is, down that gutter. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Let's not take this shit literally. The only people who have ever really read my work with any serious interest, as far as I know, have been girls that I'm fucking. And their motivation is as transparent as it comes, because they're trying to learn some secret understanding about my behavior in order to gain some insight where they can have an upper hand. And then they try to psychoanalyze my behavior, and then they don't like the way I behave after they've tried to psychoanalyze me. I find that interesting. I find it like they're trying to learn the rules of a game, and then they see the parameters, and then they try to pretend like those parameters are not relevant to them, and then they stress how much they don't want to be viewed the way that I have viewed certain individuals in the past in a very narrow light, and then they end up behaving exactly the same way, and then they wonder why I view them exactly the same. I find that interesting. It's like they can't objectively see that they're repeating a pattern that I have seen many times before. I mean, that's definitely the most interesting thing about getting older. Perspective. Getting perspective and seeing patterns repeating and repeating and repeating, and you doing things with different women, girls, and them behaving exactly the same. It's it's what I was saying about people keep loving the lies and they keep acting as if they've never heard them before. Girls keep looking for some sort of relationship or thinking that I will change or something, and them acting surprised when I don't. And then also them acting surprised when I don't act surprised at their behavior. It's like people willingly put themselves in this deterministic role. I've met many smart people, very, older, wiser, more experienced individuals than myself. And for some reason, I snap at them. I get very angry. I'm just confrontational, I guess. Like I remember last year, I went to Budapest to see someone who fucked off, so I ended up talking to someone else. Doesn't matter. But I ended up talking to this old guy. I think he was an imam. He was Muslim. Very smart guy. But I think I was just in a bad mood because the person I went to see ran off when I arrived. So I was just being hostile. And I just remember we had a really intense conversation. He was a host. He was very welcoming. He brought me to his house, and I was just a piece of shit to him. And I remember as soon as I left, I remember thinking, I need to talk with these people and not be such a confrontational piece of shit. Not everything has to be an argument. Especially when I go somewhere to look for answers, and then when people are talking, I won't shut the fuck up. So that is a personal fault of mine, which I became aware of simply because I wrote it down and became more aware of it. But then you will talk with people and they will be the most honest they've ever been. They'll treat you like a therapist, and then they will ghost your ass and you will never see them again. And there's no point in taking that shit personally because they didn't matter to me and I obviously don't matter to them. And then people will say, you're very disenchanted, you're very disillusioned, young Bruce. And I will say, no shit. People are scum. That's just the way it is. There's no point in being frustrated if the world is a piece of shit and you screaming at the world to stop being a piece of shit. The world just is a piece of shit. Deal with it. To talk a bit more specifically about writing, I have always written purely for myself, and I'm not interested in seeking out a publisher or anything like that. I'll tell you why. The fact of the matter is, the average author, we're talking about the average author, we're not talking about Rowling or Stephen King or any of them. The average author who does good will sell 800 copies of their book. Do the math. If you spend a year to write a book and you sell 800 copies for maybe €10, is that enough income for for you to survive for that whole year? No, it's not. It's not a reliable source of income. You can't become a writer and think that's going to be your full-time job. If you do, you're a fucking idiot. Grow the fuck up. I have always despised kids who just say that they're going to be artists. Kids who think they're smarter than your average fucking Joe. The arrogance is retarded. They think that they're the next goddamn Andy Warhol, and every scribble that they do is a masterpiece. Get the fuck out of here. You're not, and you never will be. The vast majority of people are nobodies. And even if you're lucky and you're an average writer, you sell 800 copies. That's it's impressive that 800 people wasted their money on your shit. But that's for me. That would be nice, but I'm not gonna hold my breath for that to happen. And besides, the content alone is for Bach. Let's just talk about Bach. Is no one would touch it in a million years. Not in today's political climate. Racism, sexual violence, mass murder. No one will pay to read that stuff, even in the fictional context. And besides, the fact of the matter is, if you have already self-published a book, which Bach is self-published, it has an ISBN number, publishers don't want to touch an already self-published book. I mean, if that is your thing and you want to sell to a market and you want to become the next John Green and write tragic stories about, doomed, cancerous love, or whatever that is, go right ahead. I remember when I was in a band in the early 2000s when I used to play the drums, and my guitarist somehow mentioned the Smashing Pumpkins, and that he never understood how a 30-year-old could be the voice of a generation of teenagers. And, it's an amusing way of looking at Billy Corgan. But I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about John Green. Why is he always writing from the point of view of a teenage girl? That's fine. I don't care, but it's not a hill I'm wanting to die on when it comes to writing points of view. I mean, I suppose you could simply say that it's a perspective on life, but I'm not interested in taking on the surrogate point of view of a teenage girl when I'm a 46-year-old man, which is the same age as John Green. I don't really want to be talking about what a 17-year-old girl in America, her point of view on social media is. That fucking does not interest me. But you're Interview with a Vampire, you're a 200-year-old, whatever the fuck, a vampire, and you're only interested in hanging out with teenage girls? I mean, if you're gonna just eat them, yeah, sure. I'm sure the meat is sweet. But there is no great wisdom to be learned from teenage girls. None. No great wisdom to be learned from teenage girls who have no experience in fucking anything. It's not this idea that you mistake beauty for goodness. It's the mistaking beauty for wisdom. That is a mistake. Just to talk briefly about Bach as a retrospective after 10 years. Like, why did I write Bach set in America? Apart from it being this car crash covered in glitter that America is. I find America such an influential force on the rest of the world, obviously being from the outside of the world, looking into America as this grotesque mass that has its tentacles out and everything. That's obviously a fascinating thing that America is. Do I want to live there? Fuck no. I think it's interesting, but I don't want to be part of it. I prefer the culture of Europe. I think it's far more civilized in its atrocities. America is thuggish, which I am a man after all. I like mind violence, to be thuggish. And America is, a brutal force of nature. And I think that's a fascinating thing about America. And the way it just cannibalizes itself and hates itself. It seems so oblivious of its own nature, because it's like this, it's tearing itself apart and pretending like it's not happening, that it's amusing to watch from the outside. And that's why I really love writing Bark. I love the setting of America. Near the end of part 3, near the end of the book, we're building to the climax of the story, and it's in Florida, a fucking shithole part of the world, Florida in general. I would fucking rather cut my fucking face off than be in Florida. It's just fucking every aspect of Florida. I feel like it's like drinking bleach or something. It's just fucking disgusting. But it's a ripe location to set horrific events in. When I was very young, when I was a teenager, and as you do, you write love poetry. You're fucking in love with someone, and that's we all go through that phase. Some of us don't grow out of that phase of writing love poetry, but I found very quickly that writing about how good and happy everything was had a finite vocabulary. There was only so much I could write about before I felt like I was just treading the same water. I felt like I was repeating myself over and over again. However, once that young love or whatever, that bubble bursts, you go from this little bubble of insulated joy and soft squishy feelings and however the fuck you feel when you're in love, to you're now in this infinite universe of hatred and contempt and nauseating fucking repulsion towards everything, where you just blame everyone and everyone is out to get you, conspiring self-hatred. And that's just that you just have so much more to work with. So America is just like that. It's so much, it's like you have a whole orchestra of fucked up shit to play with. You got all these toys that are just horrible abominations. All these mangled, burnt little things that you can fuck with and smash into new fucking horrible things. And they're all at your disposal in this wonderful continent that has so many interesting environments. A lot of Bark is set in Louisiana. Don't ask me what my original fascination with Louisiana was, because I don't really remember. I just know it was somewhere I found primeval and awful. These swamps. There's something about swamps that are quite frightening, because it's water in general is quite disturbing, but it's muddy, slimy, has trees growing out of these bayous. Trees growing out of the water, so it's not deep. But you don't know, there are things in the water, you don't know how deep it is. There's something about Louisiana itself. It's hot, there's insects, there's snakes, it's fucking hideously. It has a terrible history. It's just, it's like you're eating borscht, and it's just so many flavors. That's what America was great for when it came to Bark. You got Louisiana, interesting. You've got this hideous fucking Florida. You've got New York City, the big fucking city. You've got all of these great plains of America, these huge, endless expanses of nothing. These roads that go on forever. You've got your California. You're up north. You got the mountains up north. You got Mexico. It's geographically a great place to set anything, especially Bark. And being this American novel it is, cars and guns were a massive aspect that I did get a little obsessed with the research. But who doesn't love muscle cars and big fucking guns? My father was a big influence on me when it came to that. And guns and cars are fun. And America is this place where having a car or cars and becoming obsessed with your car. I mean, I'm an obsessive individual myself, but Bark's obsession with his Buick Riviera, I could feel his pain when he lost his car. But weirdly, there's a strange empathy with that character over something I, never owned a Buick Riviera. I'd like to. But when he loses it and then he spends most of the book trying to find another one, I understand that. I'd be like, God, all these other cars are fucking shit. That's just a side aspect. This tiny, tiny side plot that keeps popping up throughout the book. But America is this amazing, it has this extreme wealth. Like so much of the world, you have this extreme wealth. It's just, it's pornographic, the level of wealth that's in America versus these redneck fucking white trash pieces of shit, which is, very much, I can very much relate to that. It's just these inbred fucking idiot pieces of shit, goddamn Ku Klux Klan fucks. But really with no spine or backbone, these militant fucking assholes out there. And they really have no discipline. These people that preach about things, the hypocrisy of it, just everything just lavishly drenched in fucking hypocrisy. Everything in America. America, hypocrisy. Land of hypocrisy is what America is. And it's so blatant. That's it. It's not being, there's no subtlety about America. Which is what I liked. I have no interest in writing anything else about America ever again. But in the universe, or in the time while writing Bark, John Wayne writing balls deep into fucking America all the way. Because it's fun. And if you're writing fiction, you may as well have fun with it. Because it's fiction, it's just shits and giggles. It gives a fuck. It's just shits and giggles. I mean, there was definitely a point to it. There's definitely some message in there somewhere amongst all the sodomy and strip bars and torture scenes. I mean, at some point, even I got fucking disgusted by the amount of goddamn, it's like another gang rape. Jesus Christ, Bruce. But, I mean, isn't that America? Am I wrong? Is America not this wonderful, beautiful place that hates itself intimately? It hates itself. It fucking rapes its own children. Land of freedom. Americans are America is this ideal, seems to have this idealized view of itself, charging into battle, stars and stripes, giant fucking flag. But it's like riding on a horse that's rotting. It's like, it is this all-American guy. He's got a girl on his lap. He's got this enormously obscene American flag, a fucking eagle on his shoulder, but he's riding a horse that's rotting. It's like its bowels are hanging out. It has no teeth. It's blind. It's on fire, but he doesn't see it because he's just so full of himself. He's just staring into the sun. That is America, staring into the sun. I mean, there's a reason why everyone remembers Dante's Inferno, and no one gives a fuck about the part 2 and part 3. It doesn't shit about it. Everyone wants to know about hell.